Operationalising visual awareness. We won't be able to define something like visual awareness. The next best thing, and probably even more useful thing, is to be able to operationalise it. Dretske says, you remember, I'm sure.
If psychologists can really identify something that deserves to be called perception without awareness, they must have an operational grasp not only on what it takes to perceive something, but on what it takes to be conscious of it.
So here, operationalise, operational grasp, what we mean is this. We can't define it necessarily, but we do have a systematic way for detecting when it's present or when it's absent. You've already seen this in the case of operationalising what it takes to perceive something. There the idea was put very roughly, and not actually quite correctly, as you remember, we can infer perception from the ability to discriminate visual stimuli. So that's an example of an operationalisation. No one thinks that vision is by definition the ability to discriminate visual stimuli, but this is a reasonable operationalisation. Very good. But what's going to occupy us for the rest of this lecture, the really deep issue, is how could we operationalise consciousness, or more carefully in our terms, how could we operationalise visual awareness? Well, a natural first thought is this. We would infer awareness or its lack from the subject's reports. If you tell me, Steve, I can see it, I would conclude that you're visually aware of it. If you tell me, Steve, I can't see it, I would conclude that you're not visually aware of it. Now, I want to suggest this is a terrible idea. This is a terrible idea. Do not do this. This is a terrible way to operationalise visual awareness. The reason for that is very simple, and I can illustrate that by doing a tiny little experiment with you. What I want you to do, and the people that you're watching this with, is just tell me when you can see which letter the thing is. Okay? So right now I'm assuming you can't see which letter it is because it isn't there yet. You'll know when you can see it. Are you ready? I hope you're ready. Are you ready? Let's go. There you go. Now, if we were following the method of asking people whether they're aware of something, I guess what we'd say is, when you tell me that you're aware of it, I know that you're aware of it. Now contrast that task with another task. Here I will ask you to guess the letter. I just want you to guess what letter that is. And I'm going to give you a forced choice here, so you have to give me one of the letters of the alphabet. It's a forced choice task. Now the important thing about this is that this second type of task, the forced choice task, is called an unbiased task. It's an unbiased task because we wouldn't expect you to have a bias towards any particular letter. By contrast, think about the first task. Some people may be relatively cautious. So you may be thinking, gosh, I don't want to say that I can see it when I can't. So you'll be biased towards being very conservative when you judge you can see it. Another group of people, you may be really gung-ho here. So you might want to say, you know what, I've really got to be able to say that I can see it as soon as I can. I don't want to be able to see it and not say. So you would be giving us relatively early responses. And of course we could fix that. So I could divide you into two groups now. I did this once. It's really good fun, except for that I didn't give everyone £10. But the idea is this, that in this group, you get £10 if you answer correctly, but you give me £1 if you answer wrongly. In this group, you get £1 if you answer correctly, but £10 if you answer wrongly. And what you can see, what you'd expect here is that this group here, the risk of being wrong is pretty small, the benefit of being correct is pretty high. So this group here is going to be ambitious. They're going to try to get it correct, and they're not too worried about error. By contrast, this group over here, the reward for being correct is small. The cost of being wrong is large. So they're going to err on a different side. The important point is this. If I am trying to measure awareness by asking you, can you see the letter? The question of bias is always going to sneak in. The question of bias is always going to sneak in. So the fact that one person says yes and another person says no could be due to the fact that one person is aware and the other is not. But it could also be due to the fact that one person is in group 1 and another person is in group 2. That's to say, one person is biased towards getting it correct and not worried about getting it wrong. The other person is biased towards not making a mistake, even at the expense of not giving the correct answer. So differences in what people say are, basic signal detection theory, a consequence of what they're perceptually aware of and the bias that they have. So this is not a good way for us to measure perceptual awareness. And this is primarily why I think we shouldn't infer a lack of awareness from the subject's reports. In fact, the point here is even simpler. Imagine that you're a doctor. If your method is to listen to what your patients say and then infer the illness that they have, you're going to really be in quite a lot of trouble there. People are going to come in and tell you that they've broken a leg or they've broken a toe or they've got COVID. And most of the time they've got no clue what's going on with their own bodies. Humans are just very bad at making judgments concerning almost all of these matters, with some exceptions. Likewise with what's going on in our own minds. Of course we're bad at making judgments. There's no reason why we should be good at making judgments about our own mind. Why would an animal have the ability to have this marvellous understanding of how its own mind works? What would be the point? Any more than understanding how its own body works. That's something that is a scientific achievement, not something that you would expect from everyday life. So, whether you buy the story from signal detection theory or not, and you should, it's a very basic point, whether you just think humans are pretty bad at making judgments about themselves, bodily or mentally, you should buy that too, that's true. Either way, we shouldn't infer lack of awareness from subjects' reports. Why is this relevant to us? Well, if you remember, our question is, can you perceive something without being aware of it? And I started our discussion of this topic by appeal to the lovely experimental work from Boris Sidis, partly because I think that's a classic piece of work that's very intuitive, but partly because I was looking ahead here and thinking, you know what, Steve, that's a great way to illustrate a failed attempt to show that you can perceive something without being perceptually aware of it. Why do I think Sidis fails? For the reason just given. His measure of whether or not you're aware of it is whether you tell him. But if I say, look, Boris, Mr. Sidis, I can't see this thing at all. I can't see this thing at all. I've got no sense of where it is. It doesn't follow from that I'm not aware of it. The fact that you compare that with the ability in the forced choice case to tell you which letter it is, and I can do that, rather indicates that I might be just at the threshold of awareness. I might just about to be able to see it, but not confident enough that I can to tell you that I can, but I can see it well enough to guess the letter. So I think Sidis's experiments don't provide us with good justification for a positive answer to this question. But what about the blindside experiments? Can we dismiss those in the same way? Or are things more complicated when it comes to blindside? Let's find out.